This is Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a homebirth mum of 2 little boys. I'm a mental health nurse and the co-creator of Homebirth Victoria. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or my work, check out www.birthingathome.com.au. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is episode 75, and it's shared by Elle, a first-time mum living on the land of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong Peoples. She shares her pregnancy story and how her frequent engagement with the hospital system due to her debilitating hyperemesis gravidarum influenced her decisions around what model of care she wanted and had hoped for. Ultimately, despite back and forth and advocating for the same, Elle was unable to access midwifery continuity of care or a home birth through the publicly funded model. She then made the decision to birth unassisted with the support of her partner. I met Elle in the later part of the 3rd trimester as she was navigating this decision and was shocked by some of her experiences that she had, especially considering how her pregnancy had already significantly impacted her mental health and well-being. Enjoy this episode. Welcome, Elle, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you. Obviously, I know this birth story because although I missed the birth, I was with you through some of your pregnancy and postpartum.
Yes.
And yeah, Henry is almost 1.
Yes, he's 11 months, almost 1. Yep.
So what an awesome time to reflect on this journey.
Yeah.
Are you able to give a little bit of background to who you are, who's in your family, that kind of thing?
Yes. So I'm Al. I'm from Melbourne, and I have my wonderful husband, Ty, and then I've got my 11-month-old son, Henry, who was born at home.
Yeah, cool. And like I was saying before, so yeah, I usually start off by asking, how did you learn about home birth, and what was your understanding of birth and pregnancy growing up?
Yeah. So in terms of my knowledge about birth and things like that, I have to admit that I didn't really know anything. I hadn't really thought too much about birth and how it would look for me until I was a couple of months into my pregnancy. And yeah, as things kind of progressed and I felt a bit more secure in how things were rolling along, I thought to myself, I better start, figuring out what it's all going to look like. I don't really have any background in terms of my family's, practices or, thoughts and things like that. So it was definitely up to me in terms of how I wanted to progress, what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I originally thought I might want to do a very medicalized route. I wanted to actually do a C-section. That was my initial, choice.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought I have a very low pain tolerance, and I thought I wouldn't be able to handle birth because I definitely read and sort of lent into the media view that birth is painful and scary and messy, and I thought that having a C-section would be bypass all of that. Yeah. And I actually remember at my very first midwife appointment with the hospital, where they basically bring you into their care and to the system and log everything. Yeah. And the midwife said something along the lines of, when you have your birth, assuming everything goes well, you'll be discharged within a day or 2. And she didn't say anything about how that would look if you had a C-section, which at the time I thought I wanted. Yeah. And I remember being a little bit confused as to why that wasn't even brought up. And I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting. And then after a conversation with my sister-in-law about her different births, because at that point I started to ask people, how was birth for you? They had kids and things.
So you're already pregnant at this stage?
Yeah, I was about, what is it? What's your first appointment? 12 weeks, 16 weeks or so?
Roughly,
yeah. So I was around there, and I'd really thought I wanted to have a C-section. I thought that would be the best route for me. And it was only through a ton of research and self-education did I come to the realization that actually, for me, that was definitely not the best choice. And I ended up doing a complete 180 and completely avoiding the medical, the medicalization of birth, hospitals, doctors, midwives, absolutely everything, and then ended up with a home birth with just myself and my husband there. And so it couldn't have ended up any different from what I had originally thought I wanted.
And so going into, so you went, you become pregnant and you go to the GP, I imagine, and they refer you to the hospital. Did you know anything about like midwifery care or like that the hospital, because the hospital that you were going to had this home birth program, right? Did you know about any of that?
Wow. Yeah, that's a whole situation. So no, I didn't. Again, a lot of information I was finding out in the moment and from people who were talking to me and telling me, what I needed to know in that moment. And I did place a lot of trust in, caregivers like my doctor to give me the right information. And then obviously the midwives once I'd moved into midwifery care. So the hospital that I was at, yes, they had a MGP program, which I think is from what I understand, like the kind of gold standard of what you want to get into. And well, that's how it was kind of presented to me. And when I had my first appointment, I'd already been suffering from the HG symptoms, the hyperemesis symptoms that I'd basically ended up suffering with throughout my whole pregnancy. And so my first appointment, they'd said to me, we do this MGP program. We think you'd be a good candidate. And they presented it to me and said, we think this would be a good fit for you. I didn't ask about it. I didn't ask to be part of it. I didn't bring it up. In that first appointment, they said they were going to write me a referral and that I should be placed into it and then, get to access it and all would be well. To just summarize, I did not get access to that program at all during my pregnancy. I asked about it at every single appointment. And every single appointment, it was just a case of, your referral is sitting there. Your referral is sitting there. Your referral is sitting there. And every single time I spoke to someone, they would say, we'll chase it up for you. We'll chase it up for you. And so I don't know why that was presented to me if they weren't able to actually give access. I didn't see the point of it because it actually ended up being a huge point of stress and worry and frustration, especially the closer and closer I got towards the end because at that point I had, and this is fast forward to about 30 something weeks, I had decided that I wanted to do a home birth, and I knew that having access to the MGP program would mean that I would get, the one midwife at home, potentially a second. It would actually be, in my opinion, more care than you would get at a hospital potentially, because you would almost have two dedicated midwives. And just every single time I had an appointment, and because I was quite sick during my pregnancy, I was having quite regular appointments, like almost every week. And every single time I asked, and I would say, have I been put into this MGP program? And every single time it was just a no. So towards the end, I just kind of stopped asking because actually, no, I didn't stop asking. I just stopped following up so intensely. And then towards the end, I was given some information that it was due to I suffered from some mental health struggles throughout my pregnancy, as well as the really severe HG symptoms. And I was told, believe it or not, that my HG symptoms and my mental health issues excluded me from the program.
It's just like wild. I remember you telling me that and being like, what the heck?
Now, I actually do want to mention this as a point because what ended up happening was, me being me, I had been doing a lot of research at this point, and I knew that a physiological birth, which is what I wanted, had no HG symptoms, do not have any impact on a physiological birth, apart from, you know, there's a potential for you to be a bit dehydrated and to, you know, perhaps not be able to, you know, you might get a bit weaker, you know, during labor because you're not able to keep any solids down, things like that. But overall, I knew it wouldn't have a huge impact on a physiological birth. And with the mental health thing, I knew that it actually can, studies have shown that it can improve people's mental health to be able to be in the space that they want to be during birth. And then that can impact the postpartum period because you're able to have the birth that you want. You're able to have all those natural hormones in your body doing the things that they do. And it can actually help the outcomes of postpartum depression, which I really wanted to do everything in my power to make sure I didn't sort of fall into that lull of PPD. And so I was really, really keen to push for it because I thought, given everything I'd struggled with during my pregnancy, I wanted to do everything I could to help me, you know, get better and to not continue with these mental health symptoms that I'd had. And, you know, I wrote a really long email to the manager of the MGP program, and I laid all this out, and I said, you know, how can you exclude someone according to these two? It's not mentioned anywhere. I went through all your risk and aversion criteria. It's not mentioned anywhere. And then about a week later, I went in for my next midwife appointment, and the manager of the MGP program came in and had a chat with me. And it was really bizarre because she then turned around and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but everything that was told to you that last appointment is incorrect." And it's nothing to do with mental health issues or HG symptoms. We just don't have space. We just don't have the capacity to put you in the MGP program. And that was
it's just such a crazy, crazy story. It's so, look, I'm so glad to be able to share this story to like sort of unveil the things that are happening in like the, you know, I guess the system, if you want to call it that. What I am curious about, which I wonder if you can speak to, is a little bit more about how you experienced HG, your hyperemesis. I was thinking about this. Is it gravidarum or gravidia? Like HG. How was your experience? When did that come up for you? And like, what was that, you know, impact on your mental health briefly? And also like, what did it demand of you? Because from what I understand, you were having like IV fluids like very frequently. I'm just pausing here to let you know that I'll be taking a break from releasing new episodes soon. I am excited, though, to let people know that I am now offering EMDR trauma therapy online and in person in Melbourne. I'm a strong believer that trauma and negative life experiences can and do play out in our experiences of pregnancy, birth, and parenthood. If you'd like to know more, please visit my website, www.birthingathome.com.au. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Unfortunately, HG was a huge part of my pregnancy. And I mean, I can definitely speak to it. I won't go into too much detail because there's a lot. But look, I actually started symptoms. So I found out I was pregnant in November. And then it was pretty much a month later, and it was actually Christmas Day of 2023. I got my first HG symptoms, and you know, at the time, it was obviously crap to have it on Christmas Day of all days. You know, you want to sit down and enjoy your Christmas dinner and things. But at the time, I wasn't worried because I thought, you know, it's normal for people to feel nauseous during pregnancy. Completely fine. It was very quickly what I felt was very, very intense. And I know that, you know, that first trimester can be very, very common to have HG symptoms, but then it clears up, you know, relatively quickly, and or you just don't experience that much. Maybe it's just a bit of nausea, a bit of vomiting. But I actually had some friends staying with us during that period, and the vomiting was so bad that I couldn't really leave the toilet to say goodbye to them. I was throwing up that much. And it was pretty intense in that first period. And again, you know, I was just accepting this is okay. It will pass. It will get better. It started to get to a point around, I think it was maybe late January, early February, that we started thinking this is a bit intense, because I couldn't keep any liquid down. I would have a sip of water and then it would cause me to vomit. And we started realizing that, I was starting to fall into, the dehydration camp.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was just nonstop, dry heaving. And, it was past just bringing up bile. Like there was nothing in my stomach. There was no liquid, but I was still heaving. And I was actually worried that it was hurting the baby. And so we ended up in the emergency room, and they gave me some fluids. And this was probably around the start of the time when I realized that people don't tend to listen to pregnant women, especially when they present you with symptoms. Because I would say, for example, I'd already been to the doctor at this point, asked for anti-nausea medication, which I was really against taking. And I had been taking them anyway because it was so bad, but the medication wasn't working. And I was telling the people in the ER room, I've been taking this, and this medication. It's not working. Look, this is why I'm here. And they left me at the end when they discharged me with a prescription for the exact same medication. And I said, but this doesn't work. So have you either got anything else, or is there any other solutions? And they said, no, not really. Look, you'll be fine in a couple of weeks. So again, sure, first time, roll forward another month, same thing happened, nonstop vomiting. Hai was really worried about me. We went to the emergency room again, the same thing. But apart from, a bag or two of fluid in the moment, there's not much they can really do for you. But again, I would tell them, I'm taking this, and this, and they would go, oh, we've got this really good medication for you. And it turned out to be the exact same thing I already told them I was taking that wasn't working. Okay, sure. And then it basically got into this cycle of, by that point, they'd said to us that, we should contact, your midwife team. The midwife team had said, bypass the emergency team, the emergency room, and just come straight into the maternity assessment center of the hospital, the MAC unit. And we did that a couple of times. And, they set us up with, several bags of fluid, of IV. And so that happened a couple of times. And by this point, I'm probably about 5 or 6 months along. And, they're like, oh, this is unusual. We don't typically see people with this severe symptoms this far along. And look, it was really awful. Like at one point it was so bad that I hadn't had anything to drink for, I don't know, let's say a few days, if not maybe like a week or so, where I'd been surviving on, the sips of water that I could keep down. And I came out into the living room and I said, I don't feel good. I can't really explain it, but I kind of felt delirious. I'm not sure if any listeners have ever experienced dehydration, but it can affect you really badly in the moment, mentally. And I came out and there was an ad on the TV, and it was for like a sports drink. And I looked at the ad and I was like, oh my God, like they're out to get me. Like they're advertising these sports drinks and I can't drink anything at the moment. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh my God. And Hai looked at me and he's like, are you okay? You don't seem good at all. And I was like, I'm just so thirsty. I was like shaking and, I was just, it was just really, really bad. And he just was like, oh my God, okay, we need to get you to the hospital again. So we pretty much went, I think it was straight away, and we just said, she's like having dreams about, being able to drink and, and I was like looking at people drinking their water and things like that. And I remember speaking to one of the doctors and they had a bottle of water with them. And I was just saying how dehydrated I was. And he just took this big swig of water in front of me. And I just go, oh God, are you serious right now? I'm telling you how I can't drink anything because anything I do drink, I bring up. And I just thought, oh, that's a bit insensitive, isn't it? Right. So, it was really bad. And at that point, I think, we had to sit down and I had to say, look, I have been given a medley of medication. I've been through every single medication, every single, combination of different pills and putting this with this and taking this at this different time. And it just, nothing was working. And I was saying to them, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this medication doesn't work, or I'll take it, but I'll throw up again, and it's not staying down long enough to have any impact. And then it was probably towards the end, I'd say I was probably in maybe month 7 or so. It was the last 3 months of the pregnancy that they eventually decided I was just going to come in every single Wednesday, and I was going to get a bag of fluid or 2, depending on how I was. And they were just going to try and keep on top of it, because we'd noticed that after every single session where I'd had some IV, even though I couldn't drink, I felt better for a couple of days because I was topped up. There was fluid in my system, and it slightly helped. Like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were typically not terrible days. It would usually start, getting worse throughout the weekend, and Monday and Tuesday.
Wow.
So, we set me up with these weekly hydration clinics, and I would go in, and that didn't stop until like a week or 2 before before the baby came. So I ended up having hyperemesis pretty much up until he came. And that, I think the statistics for that are somewhere in the like 1 to 3% of all pregnancies. So it was awful. And when you asked about the effect it can have on your mental health, that was a very, very trying time, because when you're that sick, it becomes all consuming. All you can think about is how sick you feel, and spending time in the toilet, sometimes hours at a time, and having to plan everything around having access to a toilet, or having, I would go everywhere with my little sick bags, those little plastic round bags you get from the hostel. And I didn't do very well. I definitely started to feel some really intense feelings of anxiety. I started to feel some intense symptoms of depression, because it felt never ending. I wasn't able to sleep properly. And the insomnia, whether that was caused by the HG or the HG caused the insomnia, because I was actually waking up to vomit. And so I was actually given some sleep medication, which turns out, A, it didn't really work, and B, it was meant to be anti-nausea medication. And I only found this out about 3 or 4 months after taking it. And I said, the doctor was asking me, oh, you're on this particular medication, and is it helping you sleep or stopping you vomit? And I would say, no, it's doing neither. And it turns out it was actually anti-nausea medication that wasn't working for either purpose, sleep or nausea.
Yeah.
So, I really struggled with my mental health. And I think the insomnia really made things worse, because when you have insomnia, you can't rest to get better physically or mentally. And so I especially months, I think it was 4, 5, 6 roughly, it was just really getting through one day at a time.
Yeah.
And that was all I could do, was to literally get through one day at a time, because I couldn't do anything else. There were many days where I couldn't eat or drink anything. I didn't have the energy to get up. And all you can do is really, lay on the sofa or lay in bed, and you don't take enjoyment in anything. You don't want to do anything. And everything felt very, very dark. And I sometimes thought that, really dark thoughts like, why is my baby doing this to me? I just couldn't understand how I was growing this baby and giving it life, but it felt like it was trying to sap mine. Yeah. And I really hated feeling that way about my baby, because, so many women have these pregnancies where, they're perfectly normal, or, someone would feel great with pregnancy. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I did not bond with my baby at all. I didn't like my baby. I loved it, but I couldn't help feeling very resentful towards how the baby was making me feel. Yeah. And if it hasn't been for Hai and his, constant, positivity and support, I might not have made it through, because I just was just having the worst time. And
it's really, really serious. And obviously, there's been very, very sad stories that ultimately have been precipitated by the intensity of HG. And it just makes me so mad, because continuity would have been great in your pregnancy. I remember you telling me about, you know, going for these IV fluids, and every time it's like a different nurse. And I mean, I'm a nurse, so I get it.
Yes.
I really get it. I also work in mental health. I really get it. But like, you know, every time you're going in, different nurse asking you like the same questions, giving you some superficial answer, or not knowing your story, or not knowing that, you know, you've been in here a bazillion times already. And yeah, I remember just thinking, gosh, that must be, you know, you want to go in for the fluids because it's going to give you a little boost up to somewhat normal for a couple of days, but then, you know, you've got that mental battle of somebody saying, oh, how are you going? You know, those expectations that you are bonding with your baby, that you're enjoying pregnancy. Like pregnancy is nice, you know, at 6 months, 7 months, oh, like, you know, the vomiting and nausea is gone. Like this is your best time. And whereas for you, it was just not like that at all.
No.
And like continuity of care with, you know, one or a couple of known midwives or whatever, even to I mean, you can't really change like the continuity of the nurses or the midwives giving the IV fluids in MAC or wherever it was. But, you know, somebody to be able to debrief with and share, you know, these ongoing and like hold that for you, hold it with you, because like it must have been so isolating as well.
It really was. And I think I didn't realize the importance of continuity of care. That term is so important during pregnancy, because I saw the opposite of it. And I realized because of that, the importance of continuity and seeing the same person, because every single appointment, every single midwife appointment was a different person. I think one time I saw the same doctor towards the end, and that was the only time that I saw the same person. I think it was those 2 occasions I saw the same doctor. Yeah. And when I went in for my IV, I was in weekly. So I was really shocked. I was like, God, there are so many nurses that work here, because every single time I saw a different person, which again is to be expected. You know, I don't expect that to be a place of continuity, of course, but because people are polite and they ask you how you're going, how are things, and it was getting very draining, because every time I would speak to someone, it would be the same thing. No, I'm not okay. Or do I just lie and say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. No, I'm not okay. I feel terrible. I feel like crap. I'm struggling. No one listens to me. Nothing I'm taking is helping. And I just can't wait to not be pregnant. And then people are like, oh, okay. And then that just shuts people up. You know, it's that basically. So, look, if you're ever lucky enough to get access to a model where you can see the same person, whether it's private or public, you know, it's invaluable. And I really wish that I had that, because that definitely contributed to my struggles with my mental health. Every single time I spoke to someone saying, I need help, I'm not doing well, I don't feel good, every single time I'd speak to someone, I would have to tell them what was going on and what was my story and why am I not feeling good and what symptoms am I feeling and am I a danger to myself or anyone else. And every single time having to relive and rehash those thoughts and feelings of how physically and mentally bad I felt made me feel worse. Absolutely. And towards the end, I just stopped saying anything, because it was almost like I can see the finish line. What's the point of talking about it? But it never got better. It got marginally better with my mental health towards the end, because I spent a lot of time and energy. You know, by that point I had touched base with a really, really good psychologist, and I was, you know, already working towards trying to, you know, alleviate symptoms and, you know, working through things and whatnot. But, you know, especially with physically how I felt, it never really got better. So if you can get access to someone who knows your history and knows you and knows what to ask and what not to ask, you're golden. And so, because I know that we connected like really late, I guess you could consider, in your pregnancy, like I want to say 36, 37-ish weeks. That sounds about right.
And I remember then that, you know, birthing at home birth, but sort of, you know, in what other people call free birth, or an unassisted home birth, like that was on your mind, that was like part of what you were thinking. And especially, you know, that 36, 37 weeks, like you're coming up to the time where like it's go time.
Yes.
How did you, like, I know you said that you like did a lot of self-learning and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember like any like initial thoughts that you had around birthing at home without midwives? Like, how did you, because that's like quite a, you know, often people call it like radical responsibility to be like, okay, well, kind of stuff you guys, I'm just going to, I believe I can do this and I'm going to do it by myself if you won't support me. But like that is, you know, a bit of a, I guess, a learning curve maybe, or something that, you know, evolves over time. Do you remember how that was for you?
You know what? It's really interesting because it was only through learning about home birth that I learned about free birth. I'd never heard of the term free birth. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know why you would do it. Like, to me, you know, typically the media portrays this very all hands on. There's so many people involved in birth. And, you know, the only time when, you know, you're not in a hospital is like in an emergency if you're like in the forest and you just suddenly go into labor. And so, you know, it wasn't something that I wanted to do or even thought about, but it was just a slow series of events that kind of led me to that point. So I knew that home birth was 100% what I wanted to do. It was never something that I was, you know, digging my heels in about, but I just really wanted to do my best to put myself in a position where I could have a home birth, preferably assisted with a midwife or two. In my mind, I was actually trying to set us up with more care because, like I said, my understanding of the way it worked was that you would get your main midwife, but then you would also get a secondary midwife to support the main midwife. So I said to my husband, I was kind of like trying to get him on board with the home birth thing. And I said, we'll actually have more care because, you know, in a hostel, you know, they might not have enough midwives and they might not be able to come in that moment, and you might just push the baby out and there's no one around anyway, you know.
I mean, it's possible. Yeah.
And I've heard stories where that has pretty much happened. So look, I said to him, you know, we'll actually get more care if we do it at home because we'll be the only ones they're focusing on. You know, there's not going to be their attention anywhere else. And so, you know, he totally understood where I was coming from. So I definitely was on the page of, you know, let's have midwife, a medical professional around, of course. But it was only when, and I mentioned obviously the story about the access to the MGP program and then them turning around and saying, we don't have capacity. And at that point, I was just kind of done with the hospital and policies and, you know, decisions being made behind my back. And I just said to myself, you know, at this point, I feel like I know enough about birth. Like I truly had, you know, learned a lot, far more than I ever expected to in this journey. Because at this point, I already knew that I'd be doing it, you know, not in a medical setting. So I needed to know that, you know, whether things were going to go wrong or not and what to expect and what is normal versus what's unusual. And so I had a really, really, I felt confident. And I think when you feel confident about birth, like that does something to you that makes you look at it in a much more different way. And I just knew that, you know, I could do it. And when they actually came back with a decision that we weren't getting access to the MGP program, that set into motion the whole, you know, idea of free birth, because I said, you know, well, that means no access to a midwife, right? And they said, yeah, no midwife. And I was obviously, you know, devastated because I was hoping we'd have two. And, you know, I was like, okay, so what do we do? You know, I actually asked them, what do we do? And they said, oh, well, you know, you just come in. Like, it was just so obvious to them that you would just come into hospital. Like, what else would you do? And I said, but I'm having a home birth. I want to birth at home. It didn't kind of, I don't know. We were very on different pages. And so they said, well, if you want to birth at home, you're going to have a private midwife. And I thought, oh, okay, right. We're just on different completely different pages, because I wasn't just going to, just because I couldn't have what I wanted for the home birth didn't mean that I was just going to give in with having a home birth. That's not my train of thought. So after a really long conversation with my husband, and, you know, we tried to weigh up the pros and cons and things like that. And we just decided that, you know, we looked into private midwives. They can be very expensive. It's definitely a privilege to have them. And, you know, I think everything I've heard about them is they're 100% worth it. But for us, the kind of birth I said I wanted is I didn't want anyone to be involved anyway. I wanted to do it on my own. I'm a very, very, very independent person. I have been from a very young age. And I've done a lot of, monumental, awesome things. I've done, run marathons, climb mountains, things like that. And I said to myself, if I can do those things, I can give birth to a baby. Millions and billions of women around the world do it every day. You know, is a big deal. It's a huge deal, but it's also not that big a deal because we're designed to birth. We're literally made to give birth. And like I said, I felt confident in it. And so I said, you know what? I don't necessarily want to pay someone thousands and thousands of dollars to potentially just be present. Because in my ideal plan of birth, and I think I sent you a copy of my birth plan. At this point, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. Yeah. I just really wanted someone to be present in case something went wrong. Yeah. I didn't want them, intervening. I didn't want them, saying anything. I didn't want them pulling or pushing or, doing anything. Just be there. If something goes wrong, step in. Yeah. And, Hai and I had many, many conversations about all the different things that could go wrong, what would happen if, something did go wrong, how long it would take us to get to the hospital, at what point would we call an ambulance. And, we just really made sure we got on the same page. And we decided that it was actually okay and, going to be really good for me to have this home birth. And it didn't matter if no one was going to be there because I knew I could do it. And the only person who was going to do it was me. Yeah. So, he, at this point, I already knew that, I had been researching. It was like the only thing that I was like reading about and listening to and watching videos of. And, I think he had confidence in me to do it. And well, I know he had confidence in me to do it and he supported me. And, I shared a lot of the information that I learned with him and he could see why I thought the way I thought and where I was coming from and all the benefits. Yeah. And, so that was kind of where we were coming from.
Yeah. And, because you found, I don't even know how you found me. Do you remember? Was it on Facebook or something?
It was through your podcast. So,
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it was through your podcast because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. Yeah. I had been watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading a lot of books and talking to people. I had been reaching out to, and that was, through yourself as well, like women who had done similar things. And so I think it was through your Instagram, I believe, you had mentioned that you were offering your doula services to people. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about doulas prior to pregnancy. Again, I learned so much, Elsie. It was just absolutely wild. But I thought doulas were this kind of, I don't know what I thought them, like this hippy dippy kind of shaman-esque type thing, which is completely, not at all.
What? I'm like a shaman? That's great.
It was just a very silly preconceived notion of but the thing is it's the term hasn't been around, but it's been around for a while, but people haven't been talking about it openly that much.
Yeah, and the term doula, the word doula, I think stems from a Greek word, and it's being a helper or being I can't remember, but it's only been applied in a birth sense fairly recently. I don't know if I want to say 100 years or less than 100 years or something. Yeah. And only very come into popular culture in the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years really. Yes. Before then it was a birth attendant or other names that kind of because once upon a time we would have had these support systems that were just people that knew birth that just would support you. They didn't have a fancy title and they weren't paid fancy things, and that was just how society was. But these days that's not the case, obviously.
Yeah, and it's such a shame because, it used to look so different. It used to be, and I said this to Hai, that, birth would be maybe like your older sisters, aunties, grandmas, great grandmas, just women who, like you said, knew birth, and there'd be a few of them around, and the woman might still be left to kind of mostly do it herself, but there'd be people around who might be able to offer some advice, like change position or give you some food, make sure you were, drinking. And then, all the stuff after, like just making sure you were cleaned up and, just being that nice, warm presence that, you may or may not want. Obviously, everyone's a little bit different, but it's just such a shame because now the models that we're looking at are, giving birth in a hospital, which obviously I've not done, so I don't know, but obviously it's very well documented. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time in hospital prior to giving birth, and it is cold and sterile and doesn't smell nice and, full of beeping machines, and I don't know. It's not a place that I really want to hang out, to be honest with you. I used to hate going into hospital for my IV appointments. Yeah. And, if you don't want to do that, you're almost kind of left with the option of just doing it on your own. And, depending on your family circumstances, you may or may not have family and or friends who can be present and be, the kind of presence that you want, because other people might be, very freaked out that you're giving birth at home, and maybe there is it isn't a midwife around, whatever. But I don't know anyone that we could have had, around without a midwife or a medical professional around that wouldn't be like, oh my God, and just totally be freaking out. So, it's definitely a shame. And I think it's a wonderful thing that doulas are a thing and that they can be that support to the women, because, obviously the focus is pretty much always on the health of the mother and the baby. But, the thing is, people forget giving birth is very much a mind game.
100%.
It's very much a mind game. And the reason I say that is because, from my experience of it, it's your body, physically your body does it for you.
Yes.
You don't need to tell your body to have contractions for how long to have a contraction.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell your body to push. Your body will push your baby out, whether you want it to or not. You can't stop your baby coming out, right? Yeah. But the mental game, that is something you have to work on. Like, you can give into it and just have the most serene, relaxed pregnancy, or you can fight it. And I think that's where the idea of pain comes from, because you're, tensing and things like that. So that I think is where women need support, that mental aspect, to remember to breathe. Because, for example, with me, that's something that I had to keep doing. I'd been doing months of practicing, with breathing and things like that. And he still had to remind me in the moment, remember you're breathing, remember you're breathing. And, again, if he hadn't remembered to remind me, no one might have done. So you forget how much of a support it can be just to have someone to be there and, mop your brow and give you a drink and things like that.
Well, I mean, spoiler, but like, I missed the birth completely.
Yes.
I was there for the birth of the placenta, but Henry was well and truly born by the time I got there. Yes. But I guess also to clarify, and I know the Great Birth Rebellion's just done a podcast episode on the role of a doula, but if people don't know, doulas are not providing any medical care whatsoever, and if they are, they shouldn't be. It's purely emotional, spiritual, and I call it like practical in terms of like, it might be, helping women into different positions, or like squeezing hips, or like massage, or like helping with that, trying to rest in the middle, like between contractions and whatnot. It's like that kind of stuff. It's absolutely, you are not replicating the role of a midwife who is providing medical support. And I guess that's why, you invited me along as well, to have somebody in the space that had done birth, had been to birth, and for Hai as well, because it sounds like Hai was a fantastic doula.
He was.
But it's I think it's valuable to still have that support in the lead up, and obviously in this case afterwards. because then, once Henry was born, it was like, okay, well, now there's an extra body in the room that somebody has to be
That's
mindful of.
Yeah.
In saying that, do you want to walk us through the lead up and the labor birth of Henry?
Yeah, the best bit, absolutely. Oh, wow. So my birth was, I definitely had a bit of a preconceived idea as to how labor was going to go, not necessarily birth, but I had this idea of, it's first birth for me, so I expected it to be a long labor.
Yeah.
And I had this idea that, we were going to go for walks and that we were going to watch movies. I'd lined up, a few movie marathons and funny videos to kind of keep the mood light and things like that. Music playlists. I was going to listen to all my favorite artists and things like that. And no, none of that happened whatsoever. I don't even think I got to watch anything. Anyway, so I actually had my last midwife appointment on the Wednesday, which was the week before. So I think I was 39 weeks that day. Sorry, I was actually 39 and like 5 or something like that. So I was due on the Saturday and I had my midwife appointment on the Wednesday. And in the midwife appointment, they were just doing the usual of, checking everything. And then there was a mention made of inducing. And she said, at your next appointment next week, if baby hasn't arrived, would you like to be induced? And I said, I'm not interested in that. Let's discuss it next time. I had no plans to get induced, but anyway.
Yeah.
And we went home and we said, because of the date, we said, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if baby was to come, tonight? And we'd been saying that for the past like week or so. So it wasn't really anything different from normal. And anyway, we went to bed, felt good and normal and whatnot. Woke up at around, roughly around 2 a.m. or so. And I was just in a world of pain. And I thought, gosh, I need to go poop.
Yeah.
So I got up, waddled to the toilet and had what I now know to be a contraction on the toilet. And it was awful. It was so painful. And I just thought, good God, this is not fun.
Yeah.
And I think Hai must have heard me because I came back and he was like, are you okay? What's going on? I was like, oh, I don't know. I got like a pang or whatever. And anyway, I thought to get back into bed and that it would go away, but no. Within another couple of minutes, the same thing came back. And I was like, oh, these really hurt, whatever they are. Not thinking, because I think I actually asked you what a contraction feels like. I was trying to like gauge what I should be looking for because no, I hadn't had any indications. There's no burst water, no bloody show, nothing to say anything was happening. And I'd been looking. Trust me, I'd been looking. So I'm just kind of laying there and I'm like, oh, this really hurts. I'm not sure what's going on. And after about 15, 20 minutes, we were like, oh, wonder if something is happening in terms of like labor. But by that point, it had already, it was just really sore. Like it felt heavy pressure in my like lower stomach. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I wonder if we should be doing anything. And I was like, no, like this is probably just like early signs or whatever. We'll just leave it. And I tried to get back into bed, but I couldn't. It was getting really sore and uncomfortable. And I went back to the toilet. And the second time, people say contractions on the toilet are, I can't remember, is it like good or bad or just helpful? I'm not sure. But like, yeah, it was just doing something. Yeah. And I came back and he heard me and he was like, you sound different. You sound very different and strange. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he was like, oh, I want you to just like maybe start timing these feelings. And because we weren't using the word contractions at this point, because I was like, I'm not in labor. Yeah. And I was like, I don't need to time anything. It's fine. And after probably another half an hour or so, he, I kept saying, go back to sleep. But I was just making all this, noise. And he was like, no, I'm up now. Please, can you just start timing these so I kind of have an idea? And we timed a few of them and they were coming really quickly, like every 5 minutes or so. Yeah. And they were lasting quite a while and I wasn't really able to talk through them. And he was starting to say, okay, remember your breathing. And then just suddenly we had to kind of face the possibility that we were actually in labor. And I was like, this is so weird, because I thought it was going to come slowly and, just
First
here and there.
Over hours.
Yeah. And, he was like, okay, well, do you want me to put a funny video on for you or something? And I was like, yes, just chuck anything on. And he was trying to find something, and I didn't even want to look at it. And it was just it had just ramped up very quickly by this point. It was probably like half an hour from when I first woke up. And after the first, I don't know, however many, 10 or so contractions, and I was kind of timing them, and he looked at the phone and he was like, I think I'm going to start getting the stuff ready now, just in case. I'll be back. You stay here. And so he made sure I had something to drink. He went and made me some toast and was like, here, just eat this if you need to, if you can. And he popped off and he got a few things ready, which would have been like the birth pool, because I wanted to give birth in water.
Yeah.
And, we need to lay some sheets down and get towels ready and things like that, which was mostly available. We were just getting it into like a nice spot.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, I'm going to give you your TENS machine. So he set the TENS machine up, left the phone with me, and tried to put some, something entertaining on the TV for me to watch. And all I could do was get onto all fours, and I just wanted to get my bum in the air. I wanted a pillow under my stomach. And he said, I'm going to try and come in and remind you, but just remember your breathing. I'd done a lot of research into hypnobirthing, which I know gets a lot of bad rap, but the breathing technique aspect of it was absolutely invaluable during birth. And, we did I think it's called like box breathing, the breathe in for 4, out for 4. And that got me through those contractions.
Wow.
Now, the first couple of hours were me trying to work the TENS machine, me trying to work a contraction timer, which I said I didn't want to do, but I think Hai was like really keen on knowing how things were progressing because he wasn't around.
Yeah.
And I was trying to drink to make sure I was, drinking something. But the thing is, those contractions were coming so quickly at that point. I was trying to learn the TENS machine, which has got 2 different channels and different buttons, and trying to put into the phone the timer, and it was too much.
Yeah. And I mean, I was just thinking, like, how did I learn about TENS? But because I mean, there's an argument for trying it before, but I don't think I did. But I had longer labors, so like, there's sort of like a warm-up period usually where it's kind of like, okay, well, these aren't so intense, so I can figure out how to use this. But if you're in the throes of like intense labor, focusing on the buttons and the channels and
Elsie, I'm really gutted, because I turned it on, I checked it was working, but we didn't faff around with it, because I thought it was just, I don't know, I just thought it was a lot more simple. I thought it was like, turn it up and then you get your intense and then you turn it off. But it wasn't. It was select your channel, because there's 2 stickers and you've got to press up, and then there's like a boost button, and that has like an internal timer for your contractions, but then you have to press the boost button, and then really you're pressing a lot of buttons. And like you say, I guess if you're leading up to it, like if you're in the warm-up and it's not super intense and you're able to kind of figure this out, whereas Elsie, I woke up and we were pretty much 5 minutes apart the whole time. 5 minutes apart. A little bit less sometimes, a little bit longer sometimes, but 5 minutes for a total contraction start to end of the next one isn't a long time.
No.
And you're trying to figure out this TENS machine and work your contraction timer and deal with the actual and remember breathing, and then everything stops. Okay, you turn off your TENS machine, because if you've got it on and you're not going through a contraction, that's not fun. Then you're turning off your timer. And so I was still in denial at this point that it was all kind of like going really quickly, but that must have been an hour, maybe 2 or so. Yeah. And, Hai's come in and he's like, hey, I'm setting everything up for you. Are you drinking? Are you eating? And he tried to like feed me, and I had something in my mouth and had to throw it out because a contraction came and I couldn't eat. And he was like, look, I hate to say it, but these contractions are saying, they come up with that like generic warning, go to the hospital. And he was like, I think you're progressing quite quickly. And I was like, no, we only woke up like 2 hours ago. How can that be?
Yeah.
And he's like, look, it's okay. Just take it as it is. I mean, he was just so wonderful. He was so calm and flappable and, just my absolute rock. And, he just said, it's okay. I'm getting everything ready. We're getting the space ready. And then when you're ready, you're going to come out and you're just going to sit in the pool. And then that will be very relaxing and nice for you. And I was like, great. That sounds fantastic. So he was just trying to like talk to me, obviously, in between contractions and things. And it just ramped up really, really, really quickly. And about I'm going to say about 6 a.m. or so, because at this point, we were talking about contacting you, but I still had in my head that we were going to be hours away. And that's why we, obviously at this point it was like 4 or 5 a.m. We were like, oh, do we call Elsie or not? Like, let's not wake her at that time.
But at this point, you've only been like in labor for like 3 hours. For like a first time mum, that's usually nothing. So I think I remember like getting or like checking my phone. I don't know if I called or if he had sent a text, but something about
he
in
contacted
labor.
you. Yeah.
Maybe like I have in my head like 5:30 or 6 or something. And then I was thinking, okay, well, I was meant to go to work that day. So and the kids, and we were like living sort of far away from like the kids' daycare at that point. So I was like, okay, well, like I factor in that like maybe I go into work for a little bit or like at least take the kids to daycare or like whatever it is. I have a little bit of wiggle room at the moment. And then like I reckon, I don't know, like 45 minutes later, 30 minutes later or something, I was like, no, I think he must have called me and I said, well, does Elle want me to come? Like, are you just like letting me know, or do you think she wants another body in this space? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do my thing. I know that this is happening. You let me know when Elle wants me to come.
Yes.
And then, like 30-ish, whatever it was, minutes later, he was like, no, you need to come. And I was like, all right. And then I got ready so quick. And I mean, our story is kind of like a parallel here, I suppose.
Yes,
that I was like
right.
literally backing out of my driveway and the call came through in the car from High, and he's like, the head's coming out.
Oh gosh, I don't remember that I wouldn't have remembered. I wouldn't have noticed. But
I mean, he was so calm. It wasn't like a yell like that, but he was so calm. And I was like, that's fantastic. That means everything's working. You're going to have a baby. What are you doing on the phone to me? I'm on my way. I'll see you soon.
Yep.
I don't know how that was for you, but
yeah. Oh, wow. I love hearing it from the other side. So look, it wasn't too long after, like you said, I'd been in labor for only a couple of hours, like 2, maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then it was about roughly 6 a.m., I think. Time is just so weird when you're in labor. Like there's no sense of time. It's very hard for me but it was just like our conversation after, he was like telling me the timings of things. And he said it was around 6 a.m. because I'd been in the pool for about an hour before Henry came. So it was about 6 a.m. roughly. He goes, okay, the pool's ready. Do you want to get in? And at this point, I was just like, I just wanted to get out of the bedroom. I just wanted to do something different. And I wanted to be in the pool. And in my head, I had this picture of being in the pool and I don't know, maybe having some essential oils going or, just listening to some music. And I just pictured this calmness about the situation, which I felt would be really helpful. So I got in the pool. Elsie, I must have had about 5 minutes of calm before I started feeling, I guess, would you call it the transition? It felt different. I felt for the first time really almost like the need to push.
Yeah.
And that was really scary because I thought this can't be happening now. I want to chill for a bit. I want to just relax and enjoy this. But the only thing I could do was, I kind of just got on all fours, let over the side of the pool and, just had to ride that intense, wave. try to definitely kind of consider them more like that wave idea rather than like the contraction equals pain and things like that. But Hai had set up the space absolutely amazingly. It was he'd gotten like a waterproof light in the pool, and it was just like, it was beautiful. We had our fairy lights up, we had Jack Johnson playing, and it was so nice, but I didn't really get to enjoy it because we just jumped into this, like, essentially this next phase. And I was trying to drink, I was trying to eat, he was offering me sips of water, and I was just like, I can't, this is just different. And I really started to feel the need to push, like the pressure was so intense, and I was like, oh my God. And I thought I was going to poop myself. Yeah. And I think, obviously, looking back in hindsight, that was, I guess, his head like coming right down, and he was coming out basically. And I was really starting to, I don't want to say panic, but I was so unsure of why things were moving so quickly, because I just had in my head, and maybe this is just something that someone else can take away, just because someone else has a long labor doesn't mean you're going to have a long labor just because you're a first-time mum. You just don't know what your journey is going to be like. So I wish I hadn't hung on to the idea that it wasn't happening now, and maybe lent into it a little bit more, because I was like, what's going on? How is this happening so quickly? And I decided to just feel down there, and I felt his head, and I was like, oh my God, I feel a head. Like, he's actually coming out. And I was in such shock and I guess disbelief. And I was like, wow, we're doing this now type thing. And, Hai was just absolutely amazing. He was just, reminding me to breathe. And, I was yelling. I was, some people like to describe it as roaring. Yeah. I was definitely yelling because, it just felt like the right thing to do. And again, I had in my head that I wanted to have this kind of really calm and serene labor. That isn't me. That was never really going to happen. I think I have to just accept that. He was just absolutely fantastic. And after, you don't really know the timings of these things, but after a period of time, he tried to get up, and I think in his head he thought that he wanted to hang some curtains up right next to the space, because he wanted to block because it was starting to become daylight at this point. And he knew that, the darkness was really helping things to move along. And he wanted to hang these curtains up. And I was like, God damn it, now's not the time. Oh my God. Like, really? And he was like, no, I'll just be a couple of minutes. I was like, no. And I guess I must have known this baby is coming now. And it must have been within the next like couple of contractions that his head came out. And I remember feeling, the I guess the ring of fire and the burning. And it was, I just remember kind of like yelling, oh, I need to poop. And, I guess that was just that feeling of him coming out. And then he goes, what? The head's out. And the thing is, I don't remember pushing. I remember actually trying not to push, because I was just, I don't know. I think I was scared of tearing, and I knew that the fetal ejection reflex would kick in, and I was really hoping for that to kick in. And I think after his head came out, I felt the urge to push, and I thought, well, my body's telling me I need to push. Maybe I should push. And I did, and he just shot out straight into Hai's hands. Oh, and then that was that. And then he was born. Yeah. And, he came out into the water, and, I stood up, and you have to kind of like, you have to juggle the cord and, get into the position. And I turned around, and I was like, what just happened? And, he's just wrapped Henry in a towel, and he just goes, here's your son. Oh my gosh. And I couldn't believe it, because it feels like the whole thing was over in 5 minutes. Yeah. Honestly, it felt like no time at all.
Yeah.
And I was just in absolute shock and disbelief and happiness. And I was like, you know, is he okay? He's breathing. And, you know, he's just making a couple of little snuffling sounds. And yeah, I took a couple of pictures, and you can see the disbelief on my face, like the absolute, like, what is going on here? I'm holding a baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was it. And then he was out and life was good. Henry was born.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I just so clearly remember, like, reversing from the driveway, and it was going to take me, I mean, it was early in the morning, but it was also kind of like, I guess, peak hour-ish, but it was going to take me at least 45 minutes. And by the time I got to you guys, I just remember, obviously, you know, in the car, I'm like listening to like calming sounds and just being like, I don't know what I'm walking into. So I just, everybody be calm. And I just, remember like opening the door, and I could see like Henry laying like on the, I don't know if he was in something, like maybe, was he in like a basket or something? Or maybe he was like on the, because you had like a squishy mat or something, I think.
Yeah, he'd moved the cushions down onto the floor to make almost like a kind of soft floor bed type thing.
Yeah. And the first thing I remember, one of the first things I remember is being like, oh my gosh, what's on his cord? because obviously Henry had already been born for like at least 30 minutes at least 30 minutes.
Yes.
And you were well, like, starting to ride those contractions, waves, whatever, with the placenta. And I think you decided that it was too much to juggle to have him still attached and also do that. So you'd cut the cord. But I was meant to be bringing the cord tie. I remember I had a cord tie and I was bringing it for clearly. And I mean, you guys had already come prepared, but it was a shoelace.
Yeah.
Wrapped so many times. Like, I reckon it was like 30 centimeters.
Oh,
good. And I mean, that just goes to show you don't need fancy things.
No, you don't. Oh God, we went backwards and forwards about what to use, and I think in the end we were planning on ordering something, but we just didn't get around to it because, like I said, you know, he came a couple of days early, and I was again expecting him to come late because it was the first pregnancy and things like that, and I think he just grabbed the first thing that he possibly could, which just happened to be, I don't think it was a shoelace. I think it was just like we have like some household rope that we use.
Oh, maybe. And I do have, I have kept, I think when you gave me something after working together, and I do have like a piece of the ropey shoelace thing, but always like that's like a shoelace. Yeah. But I mean, like it doesn't matter. It just looked, I just remember being like, whoa, what's on the cord?
Yeah.
And then, like, of course, like when I obviously saw Henry, like, you know, up close, I was like, oh, like, it's all good. I mean, that's quite clever, really. But just like,
you got to use what you got to use, right?
Use what you got to use, 100%. And we had already like had these conversations, I remember, about, okay, so what are you going to use to cut the cord? And, you know, how is this going to go? But yeah, I mean, do you want to give a little bit of a story to like the birth of your placenta? Because that took a while too. And that was also kind of unexpected in terms of how you experienced that.
It was. People don't tend to talk about it. It's kind of rubbish because it's such a huge part of giving birth. It's really not something that you can kind of wash over. And especially if you're doing a non-hospital birth where you don't have access to that injection that they give you that makes it just come out super easily. So for me, you know, we knew all about like the golden hour and, you know, the skin to skin and, you know, trying to get baby latched as soon as possible. I really struggled for the first probably the first half an hour I was okay. I felt very weak, and I felt very shaky, and it was probably just the effects of a super, super, super fast labor.
Yeah.
And then having obviously hyperemesis pretty much up until I gave birth, I just didn't really have much strength to me. So I had Henry kind of laying next to me rather than holding him. And very quickly the contractions were coming for the placenta, and I couldn't lay back. I wanted to lay back and have Henry on me. I had to lay down and have him next to me. But even that, and I think at this point you were there, and I kept saying, like, the only position I felt comfortable in was on my knees, like crouched over, in that kind of, child's pose, yoga pose. And I was obviously aware that, gravity can help things. So I was trying to kind of stay upright and not lay back, and then hope that that was kind of helping things come out. But it was so painful. The contractions for the placenta were really just as bad as the baby coming out.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they lasted quite a while. And I think the whole thing took about 2.5 hours or so.
Yeah.
And the last hour, you'll probably remember better than I, because it was a bit of a fug for me in terms of the memory. But I just remember being so uncomfortable and pissed off that I just wanted to lay down and have Henry on me. Yeah. I just wanted to hug him and hold him and look at him. But I was trying to deal with this afterbirth situation, and I was like, God, I really just need to get it out. And I felt so weak, and I felt not very good at all.
Yeah.
And I think, we tried to go to the toilet a couple of times from memory, and, see if it was going to come out, and it didn't. And it was just it felt to me like I was very close to potentially just saying, like, I call it a day. I want to go to the hospital. I need them to help me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know. I just wanted this thing out of me, and I wanted the whole thing to be over. And I was just very over it.
Yeah.
And, obviously, long story short, you helped me to the toilet, and you set up the space. So you put the towel under the toilet seat, and, your suggestion was to give it a gentle tug.
Yeah.
And I was very, very scared to do so, because you're essentially pulling out an organ.
Yeah, and like if it's not
body.
Ready, like you can do that's
damage.
How postpartum hemorrhages happen. Like it's very, and that's I guess emphasis on the gentle. Like you're pretty much just holding it, and just if that little bit of extra on the cord can get it to fall out if it's like already detached, of course.
Yes. And that's, I think, what I was really worried about is the hemorrhaging thing, because I know that's one of the biggest, most common situations that people struggle with after birth. And that was why I was really annoyed, because I thought, I've had this beautiful home birth. I don't want it to end up in hospital because, my placenta didn't come out, or it came out, but then there was loads of blood, or, I was just, again, very feeling stressed after such an amazing, experience. And, I remember you saying gentle, and I obviously very much heard you and understood you, but I was like, I wanted to yank it out because it was pissing me off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess something else important to note as well is that, obviously with fast labors, it can actually, increase your risk of postpartum hemorrhage, because things just are like so, it can throw your hormones, like, I guess, a bit off balance, and that shock that you feel after such a fast labor can mean that things can still unravel in a way that you don't want them to, as with any birth. Like any birth holds that risk, but including with a fast birth, it doesn't mean that like things are all over and done, this is all good, let's go home.
100%. And that's definitely what I learned in that moment. So I did give it a gentle tug, as gentle as I feel like, how many times you're ever going to try and pull an organ out of your body, essentially.
Yeah.
But I think I did it with the perfect amount, because out it came.
Yeah.
And I remember the relief. It was probably one of the biggest reliefs I've ever had in my entire life. I'll never forget that moment, because it just meant I could get to my baby. And I remember hugging you, and I think I cried a little bit, and we were like hugging on the toilet, and I was just so happy, and I was like, great, let me get to my baby. And and that I think took about 2.5 hours. And so the total birth, so from beginning to end, so we started at around 2:30, and then Henry was born at 7:30, so that's what, like 5 hours or so. And then the placenta was about 2 hours after that. So everything was wrapped up at around 9 a.m. And I can't emphasize how amazing it is to be at home post birth, because, you know, I think it was within an hour or two, and I think you helped me. I was like, I need to shower, I want to get clean, and I want to jump into bed with my baby. And, you know, we had a super quick shower. I just got myself all cleaned up, and I was able to crawl into bed with him. And, you know, it was just all the good hormones, all the good feelings, everything that had been ramping up from this horrendous pregnancy where I just felt physically and mentally probably the worst I've ever felt for the longest in my entire life, had just culminated in this beautiful birth that I absolutely want to shout from the rooftops. That's why I'm here today. And this wonderful experience where I got, you know, my amazing son, and I just, you know, couldn't have imagined a better experience. I had the best support. My husband was just, I couldn't have asked for a better midwife doula daddy. He was just my absolute rock. He supported me with everything that I told him how I wanted it to be, and in all the mental and physical ways. And having you there afterwards, you know, you helped him, which helped me. And, you know, he spoke about it so often that, you know, you were so helpful, and it couldn't have gone better. It actually went better than I thought, because it was so fast. Whereas in my head, I thought, like I said, I was just really hanging on to this idea it would take a long time, but it was so quick. And it was a shock, but it was just such a wonderful experience. And I'd gone from the beginning of my pregnancy being scared of giving birth to the point where I would rather have surgery and have the baby cut out of me, all the way through to having this completely natural birth. And not only did I have this natural birth at home, it was an amazing, unforgettable experience, and I can't wait to do it again.
I just think it's like such a special story for so many reasons, but I just like I also can, you know, I'm sure you've also thought about it. Maybe we've already had conversations like how different it could have been if you had, you know, said, okay, well, the MGP's not at capacity, I'm just going to have to go into hospital. Because, you know, if you want to talk about risk, then we really should be talking about the risk of things like postpartum depression, postpartum like anxiety. I mean, really postpartum psychosis, like anything to do with mental health for you especially. Like that was all in, like, you know, if you talk about risk, that was all increased, that would happen for you postpartum. And I really feel like the way that, you know, you consciously made this decision to, you know, have a physiological birth really had an impact on bringing that risk way down. And I just think like how different that could have been, and how for other women around the world, in Australia, like how much does that birth like exacerbate what's already been happening in pregnancy, and then, you know, lead into whatever happens postpartum, especially to do with mental health, like bonding. You know, you yourself said that, you know, during pregnancy it was really difficult to do any bonding with Henry because you know, were trapped in this place that was, you know, primarily the toilet, really. Yes. And I mean, having kept in regular contact with you over the past 11-ish months, and like seeing, you know, how you bond and interact, and like your little family of 3 humans at least, like it's been so beautiful to watch. And yeah, I'm
Thank
just
you.
so happy that, yeah, you have been, you know, pregnancy might not have been like a nice ride, but I really feel from my perspective that you're an amazing mum, and Henry is very lucky to have both of you as his parents.
Thank you. I agree. I think so too. And I definitely find that point really interesting about the mental health, because I know it's something that people suffer with a lot during pregnancy and also after, whether you have one or the other or both.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that people are talking about more, but there's still a lot that goes unsaid and even worse, untreated. And, you know, typically if you have an external injury or some other issue, you can see it, people can do something about it. But when it comes to mental, nobody knows unless you typically talk about it or something happens. And, you know, I definitely don't want to equate just because I had a home birth or this amazing birth experience, just because this happened, that didn't happen. But I went through such a tough time mentally with my pregnancy. I was in such a dark space. It was a very close call at some times during my pregnancy. And yet, post-birth, I felt amazing. I didn't have any symptoms of depression. I obviously had new parent anxiety.
Yeah,
Every
course.
parent has that, no matter how confident or positive you feel or how many kids you have.
Yeah. I remember maybe he sent me a video or something about Henry's breathing. He was like, is this normal? Yeah, that's just a newborn baby.
That's it. Yes. I still check that he's breathing from time to time as well.
Of course.
I think I think that'll ever go away.
Yeah. No, I don't think it does.
But it was something that really concerned me, and I wanted to do everything I could to mitigate the risk of any kind of, possibility of having PPD or anything else that was going to affect my ability to be a good parent and bond. And I knew I was at a much higher risk because I had the issues pre-pregnancy. And it was something everyone kept saying to me. They kept saying, oh, you know, we can keep in touch with you after the birth and things like that. And not that they were any help during pregnancy, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was so important to me to do everything I could to try and have a good birth and a good experience, and to start things off, I guess, like on the right foot. It really just, that's what it comes down to. And like I said before, it's not just because I had a good birth that things were, magically better, but to get what you want, and not only get what you want, which is, to have a non-medicalized birth, but to have a birth at home where you're safe and comfortable. And, I did it myself. People, obviously doctors and midwives are necessary and helpful and everything, the amazing work that they do, but a normal, boring birth doesn't need any intervention whatsoever. And I can confidently say that. And I knew I wanted to do it myself, and I did. And I think that just really helped me know that, I did the difficult part, and the rest, should, not to say be easy, but flow along, from that.
Yeah.
And I think it has really helped. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because if you are suffering during pregnancy with, any issues, having a good birth can potentially help. It isn't a big, fix all, but
no.
It can definitely put you on the right start and, just make you feel positive about becoming a parent, especially for the first time. So I'm just really glad that things got a lot better, drastically better once Henry came. And, obviously there have been anxious, frustrated, crazy times where, the lack of sleep has come into play. But,
of course.
But typically, it hasn't exacerbated any conditions or feelings that I had from pregnancy. So I'm really, really, really thankful to that. And I can't recommend birthing at home enough. Not to say, specifically free birth, but if I was able to have that midwife team there, that would have been fantastic, and I would have taken that. But, that wasn't an option really, unless I wanted to pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, I still had the birth that I wanted. So yay.
Yeah. I think also something positive about this story, which, I know not everybody who births unassisted experiences, and something that I was definitely, I said to you, I'd just be mindful of, is how the hospital received this information that, you'd given birth, and how, because I think like on day 2 or day 3 or something, you were able to go in and like get a checkup and, see if there was any tears or things like that. Is that correct?
Yes. So he was born on the Thursday morning, and then we called them later that day and just said, he was born at home, all is well. We would like to come in and just make sure that he's healthy and that everything is doing well, and get a checkup for me. And they said, yep, come in when you're ready.
Yeah.
And so they were really, really easy about it. They didn't say you have to come in today or, anything. They were just like, yeah, come in when you're ready and we'll check him over. The sooner the better, but, no rush, take your time. And so, we went in when I was feeling ready, which was on the Saturday.
Yep.
I definitely got my strength back and, things like that. So, we went in, got a checkup, and they were great. They were extremely helpful, actually. And I think from memory, it was the only time that we saw somebody that we'd seen previously during my pregnancy.
Yeah, wow.
I can't remember if it was the exact same person, but we joked that it was the first time we received continuity of care.
Yeah.
After the baby had arrived. I think it was the same midwife that Hai had spoken to on the phone or something like that. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
I think
that's right. He called, told the story of what had happened.
Yeah.
And then on that Saturday, that particular midwife walked past and said, hey, I spoke to you on the phone. You don't need to repeat your story. She sent the other midwife away and said, I'm going to take care of you.
Wow.
And that was the first time we didn't have to repeat everything because we'd already spoken to her on the Thursday. So that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just amazing. I just remember being like, just be mindful of like what kind of vibe they might give off, and I was very pleasantly surprised, and I think that's worth sharing because obviously there's the system and there's the people in the system, and not all people, obviously I am a nurse that works in a system, and I would like to say that not all health professionals in the system, like the constraints of the system impact heavily on like your work. And I just think that's amazing that midwife was able to be like, nah, I got you, I already spoke to you, let me take over.
It was lovely.
That's really special.
Yeah. And she wasn't judgmental at all. She just took everything that we said at face value, and it was great. It was easy talking to her, and that was pretty much the last time we had anything to do with the hospital. And that was it. And so, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, Elle. That's like, I'm so glad that we were able to finally share this story, record this story.
Me too.
And grateful for you both for inviting me on this journey. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like you wanted to talk about, or anything that we missed?
Let me just check my notes. I think we spoke about everything. No, that was pretty much it. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for hearing my story, and I hope that it helps anyone else who listens to it.